The Percent for Art service within a housing context started, we were part of the council then, so it started within a council context, which I think is quite important really. So 1997 is when Percent for Art was officially sort of launched. On the run up to that, there was a lot of money going into regeneration. So there was SRB funding and City Challenge, and there was a lot, millions of pounds being spent on physical regeneration. And for the first time, a percentage of that, a part of that, was spent on artists working in the process of designing and installing sort of artworks or street furniture, those sort of projects. So there were artists embedded in the process of regeneration on a sort of grand scale for the first time really in our sort of, you know, memory history. And I think the head of housing, who was George Caswell at the time, saw how that process was engaging with our tenants in a way that we sort of through traditional housing engagement weren't previously, up until that point really. So he saw that there was something interesting in that, and then we were just having a huge sort of capital investment regeneration programme, and because he'd just seen what had happened with the City Challenge and the SRB, he then launched Percent for Art, essentially, so saying, okay, so as part of this programme, 1% of that capital investment will be spent on the arts. And in the early days, a lot of the focus kind of followed on from the legacy of the SRB City Challenge type process really, where we had sort of lovely street art, and still within Bolton you can see in certain areas where that was targeted, you know, you can't turn around a street corner without seeing, you know, a sign that's designed, beautifully designed, or worked in the floral and walls or up on flagpoles and that sort of thing. And so that sort of physical work carried on for a period, for quite a few years really, and there were community groups who would sort of say what they wanted, and there'd be a kind of grant scheme so people would get what they'd requested really, and they might have seen something in another area and things were sort of popped up really. So we called that our mosaics and murals phase. And then regeneration really, and our environment, economic, political environment changed, and there wasn't those big sort of capital investments, and there wasn't new builds popping up everywhere, and we were focusing more on social regeneration really than physical, and so the art service shifted with that pattern really. We were embedded into our neighbourhood management teams, which were established, and working much more sort of grassroots, embedded within communities, and became increasingly interested in the process of being involved in that creative project initiative. So the journey rather than the end destination really. So good quality artwork, whether it's a physical piece or a performance piece or music or whatever, is important as much as what people get out of being involved in that journey really. So we've become much more participation led as opposed to physical end product, at least anyway. So we've made that transition really over, and I think the benefits of that is that we are able to create relationships with people in a way that is about them being positively involved in something, about being energised and interested and even passionate and motivated to want to do more, and starting conversations. So it might be that an arts project is the start of a relationship with someone, and then they then can be signposted to help with their debt or help with mental health issues that they might have, or substance abuse, or whatever is going on in that person's life. It might be, oh, there's there's a clay modelling class in my local community group. I always fancied having a go at that. Or, you know, I want to learn how to play the guitar, or whatever it is that gets them out and into another setting where they can meet somebody who can then signpost them to all these other things that maybe they don't know exist, services and activities and whatever it might be. So we see the art services being a really important part of our social regeneration strategy. So there's lots that Bolton at Home and other housing providers especially do to invest in communities, in people, because we could manage bricks and mortar, but that's managing houses, not homes and communities, and it's communities and neighbourhoods of people that we're interested in. You know, there's an increasing crisis really in housing, and so social housing providers, increasingly our customers, are the most vulnerable people in society, and it's not a good business model for us to put people who are vulnerable, have chaotic lives, have difficulties sort of managing, you know, their budgets, themselves, their health, just plonking them in a property and leaving them to it. That's not a good business model for us, because we want them to pay their rents at the end of the day. So for us to support that person to be happier and healthier and more active and productive makes them a better tenant for us. So, you know, it makes sense for us as a business, as well as sort of our social responsibility that we take really, really seriously, obviously. So the more engaged we get people, the stronger our communities become. The more people want to live in our properties, the more our reputation is enhanced, because people say, oh, do you know about this activity and that activity that people can get involved in. So supporting people is crucial for our communities and our business as part of that as well. It's kind of a win-win, really.